Hey friends, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, Karens, and everything in between. So make sure to subscribe for more, and as usual, let's get right into today's Reddit posts. Put me on the alarm notification list, but don't give me any guidelines? Good luck. My employer was a medium-sized business, approximately 50 employees at the time, and I happen to live right across the street, about 3/4 of a mile from our office. Shortly after I started working there, they asked me if I would mind being listed as a contact for the burglar alarm, since all of the facilities/admin people lived pretty far away, and I was right across the street. They said anytime the burglar alarm goes off, someone has to drive over to meet the police. Don't ask me why, I don't really understand the policy. At the time, I was a young and naive recent college grad and figured I would try to be helpful and told them I didn't mind. Our internal company policy was if you accidentally set the alarm off, you immediately call the people on the alarm company's list, in order, so they know it's a false alarm and they can tell the alarm company to ignore it. At the outset, this worked pretty well. I'd get a few false alarm calls a year, but I'd always get an apologetic call from the employee that set the alarm off, so I would just tell the alarm company to ignore it. Then the company started growing, and we started having more and more false alarms as we had new employees that would forget about the alarm. And then we started having employees that would ignore the policy and would just leave after setting the alarm off without notifying anybody. After I got wise to this, I started telling the alarm company to ignore everything even if I didn't get a call, because we started getting charged false alarm fees, and I figured there was a 99% chance it was a false alarm. I figured we shouldn't waste the time of the police or waste company money paying false alarm fees. I brought this up in a meeting with our COO, and they crapped a brick and insisted that we couldn't ignore alarm events, because what if someone really did break in and somebody was working late? They could be at risk. So I said, okay, staff need refresher training because they aren't following the policy to notify me of false alarms, so we're going to have a ton of police dispatches for false alarm events. COO minimizes the issue and insists the current policy is fine and no retraining is necessary. So cue malicious compliance. Anytime I got an alarm call without someone notifying me of a false alarm, I followed the policy and had them send the police. There were 2 or 3 false alarm calls where the police showed up, found nothing, and sent us a bill. The very next call I sent the police like the policy said, and right as they were pulling up, they saw a vehicle pulling out of the parking lot and chased it. The employee that got chased? Yeah, it was the CEO. In addition to getting chased, he ended up getting cited for speeding as well. The next day, COO tries to pin this on me like it's somehow my fault, to which I reply, I just followed the policy you gave me. The next day, the entire company went through refresher training on alarm procedures, and I was taken off the alarm call list. I count it as a win. Neighbor's dog keeps putting itself in danger trying to destroy our plastic duck. Location is Ontario. My grandpa has a small cottage on a lake in northern Ontario. We used to get along well with our neighbors on both sides, but recently the owners of one of the cottages decided they were too old to make good use of the place and gave it to their sons. One of the new owners and his wife have a very disagreeable and poorly trained dog, and they don't, in my opinion, do their due diligence in being neighborly dog owners. Nothing worth kicking up a stink about until recently, but lots of dog poop on our property, late night barking fits, and once half of a dead baby raccoon left in our kayak for my grandmother to find. The people themselves aren't much better in terms of bright lights and loud parties late at night, but again, nothing worth kicking up a stink about. It's their property. I made some better curtains for the bedrooms and let them be. However, the latest dog problem is our problem, whether we want it to be or not. We have a septic system that draws water directly from the lake, and an intake pipe weighted by a cinder block that goes out into the lake. It is prone to migrating with bad weather and sometimes gets clogged with lake gunk, so we use a plastic hunting decoy to flag its location for maintenance. We've tried other things, but the silly fake mallard is the only thing that is built sturdy enough to do the job, but it isn't going to be mistaken for an official buoy by any of the motorboats in the area. The neighbor's idiot dog is convinced that this thing is an actual duck, and remains so no matter how many times it almost drowns, after jumping into the water and getting its teeth stuck in its plastic neck. After the latest incident, the dog owners confiscated the hazard to their dog's health. Whatever the F. It's a $20 piece of plastic. We can buy another one. But yesterday, one of them knocked on our door, irate. Apparently, they brought the dog to the vet in case it had swallowed any plastic, or suffered any other harm from nearly drowning trying to eat our plastic duck. The dog was pronounced to be in perfect health, but they want us to pay for the vet bills, and are threatening to sue us if we don't pay up, and also if we put another duck in place. And a commenter says, "Not your dog, not your responsibility, since this isn't something that was deliberately or negligently constructed to be hazardous. Their duty to control their dog comes first, and I wouldn't give them the time of day, much less tell them to F off." I fought the HOA and I won. The story takes place in Ontario in the city of Kawartha Lakes, one of the worst municipalities in all of Ontario in which to live. My old man was an original property owner of an unassumed road for 50+ years. For the uninitiated, this means that although the city owned the road, they are not responsible for maintenance, grooming, etc., beyond the scope of the limited service agreement they made with the single property owner, who we later found out forged signatures, claiming he represented the entire road. The LSA basically meant they would do 2 gradings per year, though they only actually provided 1. About 20 years ago, some city idiots, moved up on the road and decided they would create a homeowners association. They didn't get insured, they didn't incorporate, and they thought they could go around forging signatures on city documents and charging residents money for essentially nothing. It all came to a head about 10 years ago. My dad refused to pay them until the 2 chuckleheads in charge showed him how they spent the money. Rather than provide a fair accounting of the neighborhood funds, the president and the treasurer both decided they wanted to sue for the money owing. Well, we went to court and it turns out that you don't just get to declare yourself the head of an association that doesn't exist. Turns out you can't collect money from the residents and spend it on cookware and paying their unqualified, uninsured friends to do road work. Turns out perjury is frowned upon in small claims court. They found out the hard way. I discovered in their court filings examples of perjury, fraud, and general dishonesty. They manufactured documents and got caught doing so. They were given multiple options to settle in court, but turned them all down, instead choosing to self-destruct in the most absurd and stubborn way available to them. None of their witnesses showed up. They brought literally no evidence with them to court, instead relying on the phrase, "It's not rocket science," and they somehow assumed the judge would accept "it's not rocket science" as some kind of evidence, or as somehow lending credibility to their claims. He didn't. The HOA lost and ended up owing us money. The HOA dissolved immediately afterwards, and if the story ended there, it would make sense, but not be a very interesting story. But you're not here for just a good guys win story. You want satisfaction. Turns out one of those 2 old men that fancied themselves in charge of the HOA couldn't accept defeat. Our driveway lights started to disappear and someone was blocking the culvert in the middle of the night and washing out the road in front of my dad's house. Minor vandalism was happening almost on a nightly basis. So I came home late one night and sure enough, this 70-year-old moron is thrashing about in April temperature swamp, having fallen in after blocking the culvert. You can see in this photo he's got his shirt tangled in an underwater branch and can't get out. We had to haul him out because he was so drunk and suffering from hypothermia that he couldn't even move. Then we called the cops. He got yelled at, trespassed, and no driveway lights ever went missing again. And the cops let me keep the trash can lid he was using to block the culvert. Free lid. Moral of the story is don't take crap off an HOA. Man, that photo really takes the cake. Sneaking onto someone's property to cause vandalism completely drunk and then slipping into a swamp, and in the process getting stuck and being too drunk to pull yourself out. You know that guy had some time to consider his life decisions while he was there. And at first glance, this photo almost looks like something more disturbing than it is. But don't worry YouTube, this guy is very much alive. He's just drunk. You can even see he's holding onto a branch. He is lucky though, it could have been much worse for him if OP didn't happen to find him and help pull him out. But not before taking a photo, of course. I've been stopped by truancy more times as an adult than when I was a kid cutting school. Context, I am currently 24, but I've been 4'11" or 1.5 meters since middle school. When I was in high school, age 13 to 17, I used to skip school a lot. Mostly went to my friends' houses or went shopping. Boring low-key stuff. Now for a few instances after high school. When I was 18, I had a day off from work/uni and decided to meet up with an old friend. I believe it was over winter break, so I didn't have classes, but the public schools were back in session. I'm waiting at the mall to keep warm, and the security guard stops me, saying, "Ma'am, how old are you? You shouldn't be here." So I just told him I'm 18, and he turned around and walked away. When I was 19, I had late classes, so I left my house around noon. There's an elementary school and 2 middle schools near my house, and the middle schoolers have a tendency to not go to school. Not the best neighborhood at the time, so there were usually a lot of truancy police patrolling the area. I was walking to the subway 1 block from my house when a police cruiser slowed down beside me. The officer sticks his head out the window and waves me over to ask me why I'm not in school, so I deadpan and said, "I'm 19 and go to X college right now, sir." To which he rolled his window up and motioned to his partner to keep driving. When I was 20, I worked at a restaurant in Hell's Kitchen, around the corner from a bad high school and a few blocks away from the subway. I had to pass the high school on my walk to work. Similar to the previous instance, the cruiser stopped beside me and the cop looked smug, like I've got a live one. He nudged his partner as he asked me for my age/ID. I didn't stop, but I slowed down and said I'm late for work. I'm 20. The partner snort laughed and they continued on. When I got to the end of the block, I did see them stopping a high schooler who was cutting class. Don't ask why these kids cut class next to the school, I'll never know. Now that I'm older, I'm usually already at work or school during the hours that kids cut class, so no more getting stopped by truancy. Alright guys, that's all for today. Thank you for watching, I appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe, have an awesome day, and I'll see you all next time.